First off, The Last Rider, Alex just like made an absolutely inspiring, and it's one of these documentaries that one can just watch over time and time again. Just on a semantics level, when one is credited as a writer for a documentary, how much work is put into that, into the writing? Because it just seems like a lot of immersive work as far as crafting a structure on a very historical event and a very iconic human being.
Well, you've hit the nail on the head, because I think the real, the writing in a documentary is all about the structure of the story, is, extracting from, years and years of someone's life, the key points, and saying, this is the, if we connect these together, it creates this dramatic structure that tells the story, that brings out the themes that you want to explore. So in a documentary, the writing is all about structuring the story. But you know what? In a narrative film, in a superhero movie, it's also about the structure. Storytelling is all about structure. So as a writer, so I think that's the key to it. Obviously all the words are Greg's, or they're the commentators or the other interviewees. I am channeling their words, but the choices that you make as a filmmaker, those are absolutely key. And I think you kind of, when you've done your research and you've immersed yourself in these, in what people tell you, that what their experiences were, you have to extract from that the way all of these different stories cohere, and the best story that it can tell together.
Greg, you've been asked this question a million times, but I want to ask you this question. But when someone has trauma and just very bad moments in their lives, how does one persevere? How were you able to not just persevere, but to flourish? Because so many people, most people, once they have trauma or just even a setback, a daily setback, one can slink into and make up excuses and just fall behind, but you progress forward. Yeah.
Well, I mean, the trauma that I experienced before cycling was sexual abuse, which was shaming, and, didn't tell my parents. And I think cycling probably did help save me from a lot of potential, whatever, alcohol, drug abuse, whatever you want. I don't know what would happen, but cycling was, I discovered it. My dad started racing with me, and it took me on an adventure that was so exciting. It was when I won my first Tour de France that I kind of just crazy. As an adult, you'd actually think logically, why would this guy who abused me come up? But that was my first thing when I won my first tour, and that really took an edge off the joy of it, which is crazy when you think about it. But the following year, I was shot in a hunting accident, and that's really, from a physical and a career perspective, that was probably the most difficult thing I've gone through at that point. And I wanted to quit the sport 4 weeks before I won my second tour, and it just taught me that you really you got to know when to quit, but you've got to give it everything you can till you've tried everything. And I was fortunate. My wife has been such a great partner with me, and she convinced me, hey, you can quit, but just ride it out to the end of the season. And it was like a pressure valve. I think I expected so much of myself in every single race I went to, and I probably wasn't quite acknowledging the real physical damage that happened to me in my hunting accident, kind of blindly going forward. But anyways, it's taught me a lot of stuff after my cycling career. There's been a lot of adversity that I've had to go through, and I've used that same mindset to get over some very difficult periods.
Greg, what did you see in Alex as a filmmaker, where you could entrust your story and your life with him as a filmmaker? And then on the flip side, Alex, what's it like to actually get to know your subject, maybe even become friends, but then you have your primary job is to make the best documentary possible, to actually see it also with an even eye, maybe from the point of view of a journalist. So just both those kind of questions.
You want me to?
Yeah, sure.
Well, I met Alex. He was doing a movie called Stop at Nothing. It was more about doping and cycling, and obviously Lance Armstrong. And I got to know him. I think then we watched a couple of his films, but most importantly, I could tell he was a nice guy. And I don't expect somebody, just because he's nice or I'm who I am, that they would, should bias the film in my perspective. But you do have to trust people to be honest. And because I've had journalists that have had an agenda, and it wasn't really to report something that was both transparent. They came in with a mindset to set up to kind of, they didn't like me, whatever it was. So it was, most importantly, is just be able to trust somebody that you could talk to him, or at least take all his information and present it honestly. And I think he did a really good job at that.
Yeah, and for you, Alex, just
and for me, well, I can only say that it feels like the greatest privilege to be led into someone else's life when they open themselves up as completely as Greg and Kathy did to me. I mean, I feel really honored by the trust that they put in me, and I also feel the responsibility to to do a good job. A responsibility to Greg and Kathy and to the audience to probably how many more films will be made about this subject. I need to make it the best it can be, and fortunately Greg and Kathy really helped me with that by giving me everything. They really held nothing back, and I think that's really fortunate. It still feels to me as a filmmaker the greatest privilege there is to be given access to people's innermost feelings, the intimacies of their relationship, and it's a beautiful thing because it allows you to tell really inspiring stories.
Final couple questions. First off, Greg, just in a big picture perspective with LeMond bikes, has that been a more of a can you talk about your passion behind that and how big of that has been? How big of it has it been in your life as far as LeMond bikes go?
Well, I actually started my bike company in 1986. And at that time, I used the first carbon fiber frame in the sport. And I realized equipment's very important. So I started my bike company just purely to find artisans that were more advanced than the big companies. And that's the bikes that I've used in my career they were individuals that came up with a composite carbon fiber frame. So that's how I started my bike company. And I had a relation with Trek Company for about 15 years that ended in not the best way. It was mainly because Armstrong interference, let's just say. But I really love design. I love product, and I have a lot of ideas. I always think, just in my whole career, we've always importance about ergonomics, fit, position, aerodynamics. But now that I'm not a professional cyclist, I can relate to a lot of the more average riders, people who might be getting into cycling. I decided coming back with my brand to come in with e-bikes, and mainly because e-bikes were really exploding in Europe. But I got on one in 2013 after I broke my back in a car accident, and I instantly felt like I was in good shape, and which actually pushed me to exercise more, because in order to find something you do for life, you have to find something you love to do. And cycling, that's a lot of people have gotten hooked on it. And I look at e-bikes as a segue to becoming a lifetime cyclist. And you could work out exactly as hard as you can on a mechanical bike. You just have a lot more fun. That's about it. So I'm a product. I love making stuff. I have a lot of design ideas, but I love architecture. That's what most people don't know, but I'm really into product. I was always very interested in technical stuff. When I was cycling, I was the first athlete to use an Oakley prototype. And then I helped create a company called Giro Helmets with my design, really, that first helmet. So it's always, what beauty about cycling, it's if you didn't like equipment, like cars, you'd be a runner. But if you are somebody who likes to do exercise, but likes the technical part, that's why a lot of car racers, they ride bikes. So there's that kind of mechanical to physical marriage, which is it's how I won my last Tour de France, believe it or not, a triathlon bar. Our coach, Cyril Guimard, who was coaching Laurent Fignon, he was the leader in aerodynamics. They had that bar, but they decided not to use it. I'll be honest, I might not have won that tour had to use the bars. So, but that's the sport of cycling. It isn't just, you have to make a decision every race you do, what kind of equipment you race on. And that's part of the strategy. That's kind of the beauty of cycling.
Cool. And finally, Alex, just very quickly, after someone watches this film and then they're going to be led to watch Maiden, what's the next piece from your body of work that you would recommend for the cinephile to screen, and why?
That's a great question. I love making documentaries because they are they're real life stories, but sometimes there comes along a story that you really want to tell, that is a beautiful story, but maybe the footage doesn't exist, and I'm about to start on one of those right now. I've just finished a script for a boxing film actually about a young Welsh boxer called Johnny Owen and his relationship with his dad. So it's a kind of father-son relationship story, and we're just going out to cast now. Hopefully we'll be in production with that next year. It's called Skin and Bone, and I hope that I'll be able to recommend that film to people when it comes out next year.
Thank you both so much for your time. I really love the documentary, and just best to you both.
Thank you
you
very much.
Okay. Thank you. Take care.